This show is intended for general purposes only, as individual situations may vary. Statements made should not be relied upon as recommendations or solicitation. When discussed, past performance is no guarantee or indication of future results. Nelson Financial Planning offers securities through Nelson Ivest Brokerage Services, member FINRA, and SIPC.
Good Sunday morning. This is Bud Hettinger. Next on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, the longest-running radio show in Central Florida, Dollars and Cents, with my good friend Joel Garris from Nelson Financial Planning. You can call him at the office this week at 407-629-6477 to schedule your free consultation to discuss your retirement plans. Or you can talk to him right now at 407-916-5400.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Happy Easter to you all. Also, happy Passover as well. Today marks the start of Passover. And as the calendar falls, it is also April 1, April Fool's Day. Usually we'll try something in the house on April the Fool's Day to try and trick people. I remember one in particular where when Stephanie was on crutches at this time of year, a few years back, and she threw the crutches down the stairs and started screaming, which she got me pretty good. I think that was in response to me getting her pretty good the year before, pretending I had burned myself on the grill. Anyway, given that it is Easter, we probably will not engage in said shenanigans because our focus is more on celebrating, Jesus raising from the tomb all those many years ago. So the focus will be on that and not trying to trick somebody. We will observe the holy day that it is, if you will. That means that right after the show, we're going to make a beeline to church. But for now, maybe you're on your way to church. Maybe you're thinking about it. Maybe you're getting out of church, whatever the case may be. Welcome to the program. We usually do have a few more listeners on a Sunday morning on Easter, simply because there's more people out and about on the roads trying to get to church. So if you've not caught us before, welcome to the program. For those of you who have listened many times before, you know that we are Central Florida's longest-running radio program. Been on the air for well over 30 years. Started all that many years ago by my father-in-law, Jack Nelson, continued today by me, yours truly, Joel Garris. Here's what we do on the program. We talk about anything and everything financially related. On the program today, we'll talk a little bit more about the trade stuff, which seems to be dominating the headlines. Also going to be talking about the uptrend in offers to get lump sums out of pension. Those types of options we see quite a bit more of as we have this low interest rate environment coupled with rising costs, longevity. More and more companies are trying to offload that pension obligation, so they're offering out lump sums instead of monthly amounts that would last the rest of your life. So we'll talk about that. If you get an offer like that, some of the things that you need to look at and to think about. And then we will also talk about some of the reasons, some of the objections why people don't engage in having any kind of a financial plan. And so we'll cover all of that. And then, of course, we will also take your calls at 407-916-5400, toll free 1-855-545-1025, or you can send us an email. That email, joel@nelsonfinancialplanning.com, and we'll go straight to the phones. Wendell, good morning. How are you?
Really good, Joel. This is Wendell Bryant. I just wanted to get your thoughts. Sounds like the day's topic may cover what I'm looking for, but I did exactly that. I got a lump sum payout from a former company, went in retirement January 15th. So I have a fair amount of money to invest. I also have a fair amount of credit card debt and debt instruments like the mortgage payment, the car payments. So the question is, do I pay off the credit cards and the car payments first, or invest wisely and smartly and pay down the debts out of cash flow?
That's a great question, Wendell. How, if you don't mind my asking, how old are you?
71.
71. Okay. So, and how much credit card debt do we have?
Oh, $35K.
Okay. How much does that cost you per month?
Well, I would say that is costing me on the order of probably $800 to $1,000 a month.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured. Any idea what those interest rates are?
Well, they're hitting 24%.
Okay.
So one of them is $15K at 24%.
So here's how to think about that. So if you've got money, right, that money would need to generate out an extra $800 to $1,000 in order to cover the monthly payment, or take $35,000 out and just pay it off. It would seem to me that that's a much better use of the $35,000, because to get $35,000 to cover the payment of $800 to $1,000, that'd be pretty hard. So in that particular case, I would pay off the credit cards. Particularly, they're costing you 24%. You're not going to find anything that's going to give you 24%. Sorry, but that's not going to happen. And if you hear of anything like that, you need to be running in the other direction, if you know what I'm saying. So I would certainly look at paying those credit cards off. I think that would help your cash flow, and it wouldn't necessarily cost you a whole lot. Now, obviously, you're going to need to be smart and do some tax withholding on that to make sure that there's not a big surprise for you next year at tax time. But the good news is that tax rates have all lowered for 2018, so that won't quite be as painful as it might have been in the past. Now, Wendell, did you take Social Security at normal age, or did you defer it until you got to age 70?
Deferred it. It just started drawing about 2 years ago. Okay,
so that was a good decision, because you allowed your Social Security to run up to the tune of 8%. Generally, our rule of thumb is take it as early as you're eligible to get it, but if you were still working, you would have paid taxes on it, and to get the extra kicker sounds like that was something that worked out pretty well.
Yes, and it was being in the tail end of my career. Really, I was fortunate to be working enough overtime and things like that. I was getting other things in shape, but I ran out of time. They had a fairly short notice separation for a group of people, and we all had to take actually an opportunity to get somewhat like early retirement bonus for taking their offer.
more of a take it or lose it proposition.
Yeah, it really was.
That's sort of how it worked in The Godfather too.
Well, that's true. Sometimes you have to recognize that's their best offer, and you better take it.
That's exactly right. So tell me about the mortgage. How much do you owe on the mortgage, and what's the interest rate?
Well, the mortgage is $200,000. Of course, it's out there at a very low rate. It's like 3.99 mortgage interest. I got 15 years left on that.
So I would probably look at trying to include that in your cash flow, because it sounds like if this was a pension buyout, then obviously these are dollars that have never been taxed, and so to take that big of a chunk out to pay off a $200,000 mortgage, I mean, you're going to pay $75,000 in taxes on that pretty quickly. So, so in that case, I would probably say live with the mortgage, cash flow it, try and cash flow it out of that lump sum that you got by setting up like a systematic withdrawal plan or those kinds of things. And that would probably be the best way to sort of handle it. The fundamental analysis that we always encourage folks to do when they're kind of at that threshold into retirement is really take a look at what you have or what you own and what you owe. And so that's sort of what we've done in this first part of the conversation. You owe some credit cards. I think it makes sense to get rid of those. You have a mortgage. That's going to cost you too much in taxes to pay off fully. And so those are the kinds of things that you look at sort of first in terms of what the balance sheet looks like. And then next, Wendell, you would turn really almost to the profit and loss side of things, which basically means the income you've got coming in, like Social Security, and then the expenses going out, like that mortgage. And so it's through that kind of analysis, Wendell. So I'd encourage you to put some numbers on some paper and kind of look at it that way. Here's what I own. Here's what I owe. Here's my income, and here's my expenses. And that always helps to clarify the picture a little bit.
I agree. Sounds totally reasonable. I'm thinking in that direction. Now the situation also is I've taken the money from my pension plan and rolled it over into a self-directed IRA at Fidelity. So okay. I do want to invest it wisely, carefully, and all of that. But that. After clearing the debt, I'll have about $100,000 left over to invest.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. And so from that perspective, and I'm glad to hear you rolled it over to an IRA and didn't take it in cash, because then you'd have to worry about the tax implications on that. So that was a smart move to roll it over to an IRA. In that case, what you would look for, Wendell, is to have a little bit of sort of a growth and income type of strategy on that, because it sounds to me like you'd probably want to get some income off of that $100,000, maybe $400 or $500 a month, but yet at the same time make sure that it's got some level of growth to at least cover that income part. So you're kind of looking at more of like a balance type, a growth and income type of an approach. So hopefully. That will give you something to kind of think about, and if you need help on any of that, of course, that's what we do Monday through Friday at the office. So happy to chat with you offline if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I definitely would. We can do it either. Probably late on Monday would be the best.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I will put you on hold and. The producers got the phone number to the office, so you can connect with us tomorrow. And not sure if there's availability tomorrow, given that we're coming up on the tax deadline. But Wendell, we'll try and get you in as soon as possible. We'll go side to the break. When we get back from the break, we'll continue the conversation here on Dollars and Cents on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. This is Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning on Dollars and Cents.
iHeartRadio is the easy-to-use app for music and radio. Download the free iHeartRadio app today.
This is Bud Hettinger. You can talk to Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning right now on Dollars and Cents about anything to do with your money by calling 407-916-5400. Give him a call. It's time to make sense of your dollars.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Dollars and Cents here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. And for our friends on the AM dial, we're on 540 AM as well. Wendell got us kicked off here on Easter Sunday morning, and so we'll continue that conversation about pension buyouts and lump sum offers, because actually that was a topic that we were teeing up at the top of the program. And so what we're seeing out there in the world at large is a lot more employers that have these pension plans from years ago, because few offer, particularly on the private side, few offer that option to employees today. Those pension plans represent liabilities on the books of these companies. And so if you're a business looking to improve your overall financial shape, what's one of the ways in which to do that? It's to pay off your debt. Much like with Wendell, one of the ways in which to improve his financial shape was to pay off the $34,000 of credit cards, right? So what these employers are doing with these pension plan obligations is they're looking at rising cost, rising liability for a wide variety of reasons. Chief among them, of course, is that everybody is living longer, which means that liability continues to move up, because that liability sort of represents the present value of the income stream that the company is obligated to pay out to its particular employee. So people living longer obviously increases the cost. Generally, the insurance that you have to pay on a pension also is going up. Most people don't realize, but if you offer a pension, then you are required to pay an annual premium to a federal agency called the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And their role is to serve as sort of a backstop should the pension fund of that company wind up in difficulties. So basically you pay insurance along the way to support and back up that lump sum amount that represents the pension plan. As you might well imagine, those premiums are also going up as well. So companies are faced with rising costs on maintaining these old pension plans, and so consequently we're seeing an increase in the amount of companies that are offering a lump sum option in lieu of a monthly stream of income. And with the tax changes here in 2018, we expect that trend to continue even more, because in these new tax laws, there is the ability to perhaps get some additional tax benefit to do that now. And so that would suggest that you're going to continue to see this trend increase even more. So if you get one of those offers, what should you do? Well, the first thing you should do is don't take the money in cash, because if you take the money in cash, it's all taxable. Going back to the conversation with Wendell earlier in the program, he had rolled his over to an IRA. That was a smart decision, because then that meant that he did not have to pay taxes on that entire lump sum. So number one, be careful, because if you get the cash in a lump sum format, it's all income and you've got to pay taxes on it. So be very careful about that. You certainly want to take that and roll it over to an IRA in order to preserve the tax deferral on that money. That's on a lump sum. The other option is, remember, these are buyout offers. So an offer can be refused. You don't have to take the lump sum. You've got to really make the calculation and the comparison on what they're offering you in terms of the monthly payment that you would get if you stayed with the pension versus what's the lump sum that is being offered. And so you really do have to compare the income versus the lump sum and run the calculation on it and compare what the asset or the lump sum, what the lump sum would have to generate in terms of return in order to effectively match what that income is. Most cases, you'll usually find those numbers at around 6% or 7%. In those, I think there's a real argument that you can make that you take the lump sum, and if it's invested properly, you should be able to do at least that in terms of return, and then thereby generate out a similar level of income. At the same time, if you run those same numbers and you come up with a 9 or a 10% number, well, then there I think there may be some different considerations to think about, because a 9 or a 10% return is a pretty good number. So then you would consider your longevity, your health, your beneficiaries, other factors to consider in that analysis as well. So those are the kinds of things that you would be thinking about as you've run the mathematical analysis to compare the income amount to the lump sum offer. But just be aware, we're going to see more of those this year and going forward, because companies are trying to get those liabilities off their books. Companies generally have more cash today, and they're looking for ways to use that cash. And in today's climate, a lot of that is in the form of things like share buybacks, but also reducing the pension liabilities is another way to improve the overall condition of your finances. So those are some of the thoughts as to why you would see this more and more, combined with the fact that the new tax laws for this year, 2018, really do have the ability to encourage employers to do that. So look for that, and certainly if you get an opportunity like that, you certainly want to be careful, because you don't want to trigger the full taxation of the money. And then you also want to run the numbers, run the comparison, and sort of see where you're at on that. So keep an eye out for things that come in the mail from old employers of your past, because they could have an offer that has a time frame on it. Usually all of these offers do have a set expiration date. So you don't want to totally set that off to the side and not review it at all. Otherwise, the deadline will pass before you've had a chance to think about it. So make sure that you look at that stuff carefully. If you see something from an old employer in the mail, it could very well be a buyout offer on an old pension that you may have long forgot. We'll take a break here at the bottom of the hour. Stay tuned for more here on Easter Sunday morning. Happy Easter to you all out there. And we will be back here on the program Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning right after these words.
This is Bud Hedinger. You know, you can talk to Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning right now on Dollars and Cents about anything to do with your money by calling 407-916-5400. Give him a call. It's time to make sense of your dollars.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Back half of the show, Dollars and Cents. This is your host, Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. You're listening to News Radio 102.5 WFLA. For our friends on the AM dial, we're found at 5:40 a.m. Happy Easter to you all. Today also marks the start of Passover, and as the calendar would hold, it is in fact April Fool's Day as well. So everything all rolled in to one day here, just as the calendar plays out. I myself am on my way to church after the radio program, and then, of course, the normal Sunday holiday type of thing. We're going to brunch afterwards. So there you go. There's the day. So we hope you're also enjoying the day as well and celebrating the holidays. You know, it's funny how we all spend our time, and particularly what catches our attention in today's world that really does chew up a lot of time. I myself personally have found a lot of time go by if I spend too much time on any of the social media. Facebook, for example. I rarely go on Facebook, even though, of course, as a company, we have all of those social media outlets. I don't really go on it very much because there's been times when I have gone on it a little bit more, and it almost can be a full-time job, depending upon how many friends you have, to keep track of all that stuff. And so it's so distracting. And then there's so many different little games you can get to. I remember my wife was, and this goes back a little bit, but the BlackBerry phones had like that brick breaker. Man, she was awesome at that. Okay, went through her rollerball on her BlackBerry multiple times. It's funny how we can find ourselves getting fixated on these games and how much time we spend on those types of activities, planning a vacation, buying a TV. I mean, all of those kinds of things. And then when it gets down to the really important stuff, like planning my finances, figuring out what I own and what I owe, looking at my income, how do I improve that? Looking at my expenses, how do I reduce that? We don't spend that much time on it. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think that they really kind of group into 3 or 4 that we want you to be aware of and ultimately to hopefully overcome those stumbling blocks that prevent you from getting organized on your finances. And that's probably the first thing, okay? That is one of the biggest stumbling blocks is that people often get overwhelmed with a lot of different information in a lot of different areas. So this time of year, we're going to direct you to one of the best documents you have that perhaps you've actually already prepared, or you've got a couple of weeks to make sure it gets prepared, and that is your tax return. Because your tax return really does start to provide the framework for what is, in essence, a profit and loss statement. Income in, expenses out. Because if you look at your tax return, right, it'll have all your income. Because if you're not putting all your income on your tax return, you're going to have a bigger problem. And it will have a lot of your expenses. It'll have your mortgage interest. It'll have your real estate taxes. It'll have your charitable contributions. It'll have your medical expense. I mean, those are the main expenses, and it'll have all of that on there. So it will give you a pretty good starting point to help get over that overwhelming process of trying to get on top of all of the numbers. It's the end of the quarter. April 1st now marks the beginning of the second quarter. And consequently, within the next week or two, you should be getting a bunch of those quarterly statements that come on your things like your 401k or your investment accounts, or most of the stuff you'll find will be getting or generating a statement during the course of the next couple of weeks. So that's a great way to get a hold of what you own and what you owe, and help get over that overwhelming threshold, or the threshold of feeling overwhelmed, to help start to put your finances into perspective. Now, another stumbling block is folks trying to do it on their own, or perhaps relying on the computer to help do it, because that doesn't really give you oftentimes an accurate picture of what the numbers really are. And by that I mean the computer is only as good as the information you put into it. So this past week, I had a conversation with somebody who was trying to do an analysis. Actually, it was on a lump sum versus an income stream on a pension, and they had gone on the computer and done all this great analysis, and they said, "Well, it looks like that's going to run out of money within 15 years. So there's no way I would ever consider that." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. Let me look at this pretty little chart that you've done all on the computer on some website. And it looks to me like you assumed that the rate of return was going to be 1%. Well, that's not if we're going to assume rates of return over the next 20 or 30 years, i.e. the rest of your lifetime, because the reality is that if you're a retired married couple, age 65 today, one of you is going to live at least 20 years. That's what the actuarial tables tell us. So it's a bit of a time frame in front of you, in essence, a new chapter of life that you would really want to spend some time really planning using rates that make sense, right? 1%, assuming a 1% rate of return would be as silly as assuming a 15% rate of return. The numbers over time are somewhere in the middle. Most pensions today assume 7 or 8%, which is a pretty fair assumption because that's the historical data on the market. So I said, well, you got to go back and redo this chart, redo this little bar graph, because I think you'll be surprised at what the results are once you put in a more reasonable number. The other comment that I would make on the computer-driven stuff these days is it does generate allocations from an investment side. It generates allocations that are traditionally bending more conservative than perhaps they should be. And by that we mean the traditional computer software stuff will give you a much higher allocation on the bond side than what you would traditionally expect. And I think a lot of that's because the folks that put out this computer stuff want to be as conservative as possible, because if they aren't, then it could potentially mean liability to the company that's offering the computer service. So in order to limit the liability, their issue, right, in order to put them in better shape, then they give you a allocation model that is perhaps not to your advantage over time. It's to their advantage because they've reduced their liability by being as conservative as possible in the number, but that doesn't work for you because that just means that you're going to have a lower rate of return over time. So be careful on the online stuff. It's only as good as what you put in, okay? And it's has a tendency to bend a little bit more on the conservative side. So make sure that as you're going through that you're using numbers that make sense. It really struck me when somebody was in the office just this past week who had gone through this full analysis of the options and all that, and it runs out of money within 12 years, and there's no way I would consider that. And I said, well, yeah, there's no way. It's always going to run out of money when you assume a 1% return. So be careful on that. We've got a couple of more thoughts on this topic, but we're going to slide to a break. So we'll continue this conversation on some of the stumbling blocks that people encounter when they're trying to get their finances in order. And we're trying to give you some ideas as to ways to overcome those obstacles here on the program Dollars and Cents. This is Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. You're listening to News Radio 102.5 WFLA.
This is Bud Hedinger. You know, you can talk to Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning right now on Dollars and Cents about anything to do with your money by calling 407-916-5400. Give him a call. It's time to make sense of your dollars.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Dollars and Cents here on a beautiful Sunday morning. It's Easter Sunday. It also is the start of Passover and April Fool's Day, all rolled into one. We will be celebrating more of the first in my household after the program today, heading off to an Easter service at our church, which is actually, as a side note, it's actually going to be at the Dr. Phillips again this year, which is a pretty cool place to have a church service with the music. And, I mean, it's pretty neat. So we're looking forward to that. And then doing the normal brunch stuff after that. So we've got an enjoyable day ahead, and trust you do as well. We're talking on the program today in this segment about how to overcome the obstacles that people encounter when it comes to planning their finances. We talked in the last segment about the fact that a lot of people get overwhelmed. Use that tax return as the starting point. That's got all your income on it and most of your expenses when you stop and think about it. Your quarterly statements that will be coming to you here in the next week or two give you a pretty good snapshot on the what you own picture. So use those documents rather than try and scramble. Use those documents to help put this picture into shape so that you can start to get a better plan for your finances. Be careful on the computer-driven stuff, okay? It's only as good as the assumptions in the input that you put in. So be careful on that. Don't assume unreasonable rates of return, unreasonable whether they be too low or too high. Some of the other obstacles that people encounter is just confusion, just straight out confusion. 20 years ago, it was estimated that the average American saw 3,000 ads per day. 3,000 ads per day. So that would be like radio ads, right? TV ads, billboards, newspapers. When you go into the restaurant and the placemat has 18 different other businesses on it, all of that, excuse me, was 3,000 ads per day. What do you suppose that number is now? Social media, cell phones, pop-up ads, all that stuff. It's estimated that has tripled to over 10,000 ads per day. That's a crazy number. Do you think that has made people more informed? I remember the conversation 25 years ago that assured everybody that the advent of the internet would make us all smarter, more informed consumers. And certainly in some ways, it has. Although, if you're a business that's been put out of business by Amazon, you may not really like that knowledge. But the reality is that there's also a lot more information bombarding us and competing stories and competing messages, and that in and of itself can be incredibly incredibly distracting and easy to get off on track. And so we encourage you to try and reduce that noise. And whether that's just if you've got investments, okay, probably not a good idea to be watching CNBC 24 hours a day. Because you have to understand that their business is not to help you enjoy your retirement. It's not their business to make sure that your finances are in good shape. Their business is to sell stuff to you. That's how it works. So be careful about that. A lot of the focus, a lot of the topics, a lot of the language that is used is solely intended to capture your attention. You're getting bombarded. The only way to reduce the bombardment is to shut it off, tune it out. Whether it's the television or whether it's social media, you've got to reduce it down, because the primary purpose of that doesn't have anything to do with properly planning your finances, with enjoying your retirement, or saving for the rest of your life. It has simply to do with whatever the product is that is being pushed. Not to inform, but rather to attract attention. And it's those kinds of things that cause some pretty dramatic numbers when you look at how the average investor performs. The statistics on this will blow you away. There's an analysis that's done every year, and it's updated every year, and it looks at flows of money within the mutual funds. And the conclusion is that if you look at the past 20 years, the average broad-based market did a return of around 9%. Do you know what the average mutual fund investor did during that same period of time? Under 3%. You're getting less than a third of the return of the overall market because you're getting bombarded by 10,000 different conflicting messages every single day. Tune it out. Shut it off. Reduce it down. Don't look at it, because it's not intended to help you prepare for your financial future. It's intended to attract your attention. And it really is amazing when you look at the numbers and how poorly people do because of those distractions. If you could just be consistent as it relates to your investments, then you will, in fact, be much better off. And it's just getting worse. I mean, I was commenting to somebody the other day. I mean, we will communicate with our clients on a very regular basis. They get emails from us very regularly, that particularly when things are hitting headlines. And I was commenting, it used to be, we would send these out every 3 or 4 months. But now it seems like, we're sending them out every month or two, because there's always something that is commanding the headlines, that is getting fan, that is a distraction. And those distractions cause people to not properly plan their finances. So be careful of those stumbling blocks that exist. Hopefully today on the program, we've given you some thoughts as to how you might be able to overcome those obstacles along the way. The music means that we are out of time for a Sunday morning. We'll be back next week, of course. Have a great Easter, good Passover. Don't trick anybody on April Fool's Day. Enjoy the weekend. We will be back next week here on Dollars and Cents. This is Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning on News Radio 102.5 WFLA.
This is Bud Hettinger. And you've been listening to Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. If you missed any part of today's show or want to listen to it again, check out the radio show at www.nelsonfinancialplanning.com or connect with them on Facebook or Twitter. Be sure to call Joel this week at 407-629-6477 to schedule your free consultation to discuss your retirement plan.
Fees, commissions, expenses, investment costs come in all shapes and sizes. Do you know how much your investments are really costing you? At Nelson Financial Planning, we believe that costs should be a major consideration in your financial plan. After all, the lower your costs are, the more you get to keep for yourself. This is Joel Garris, and I invite you to get educated about your investment costs. Visit NelsonFinancialPlanning.com or call us today at 407-629-6477 to set up a personal conversation to review your investment costs. That's NelsonFinancialPlanning.com or 407-629-6477 to set up that conversation.
A-plus Better Business Bureau accredited. Nelson Financial Planning offers securities through Nelson Ivest Brokerage Services. Member SIPC at FINRA. Listen to Joel Garris on Dollars and Cents every Sunday at 9 a.m. on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. This show is intended for general purposes only, as individual situations may vary. Statements made should not be relied upon as recommendations or solicitation. When discussed, past performance is no guarantee or indication of future results. Nelson Financial Planning offers securities through Nelson Ivest Brokerage Services, member FINRA, and SIPC.